Gang, thank you for staying late at the Mag 40 class. We have a guest lecture that I think is going to be more than worth your time. One of the people you've been shooting with here all week, Brian Lee, is here as a refresher. I think your first time was LFI 1 16 years ago?
October 2000.
Okay. It's good to have you back, brother. At that class, he came on top in his class with a perfect 300 score. You all saw him do it again here. In between time, he found himself and his family in a violent encounter and handled it, I thought, masterfully. He saved his mother's life, saved his own, and I think there were some textbook lessons. It's my pleasure to present to you Brian Lee.
Okay, hi, my name is Brian Lee. As Matt said, I'm a former student. And after leaving the Army, my family purchased a pharmacy in Madera County, the Almond Avenue Pharmacy. We were there about 20 years. And we sold it several years ago, and now I'm retired, both of us are. And we did have this incident here, January 2013. Now, this is the outside of the building. And it's an area of doctor's offices, and then there's a hospital down the street. And this is Akila Bailey. He's one of the criminals that showed up that night about half an hour after our closing. This is one of his accomplices, Jonte Harris. Akila was about a 200-pounder, and Jonte is about a 300-pounder. And there was also a third person, a getaway driver, a female. Now, we had closed, and we just stayed working late. And I had locked the front and the back doors. But a mother had called, and she needed some medicine for her baby, so I opened it up, and then we dispensed the medicine to her. And after she had left, I hadn't locked the door again because we were leaving. And I typically unlock the door, and then I load the cars, and then we go home. So Harris, Bailey, they came in here through this way. This is the back door. Usually I keep this locked. And then you can read this, or I guess I'll just read it out loud. Okay, their actions. Bailey, Harris enter silently through back door, wearing black ski masks, black sweaters, black pants. They do not speak or make any sound. Neither of us see them. And when in perfect position, they both begin to shoot without making any demands or threats. I was working at the time behind the counter. I happened to hear some footsteps. I looked up. I saw a ski mask. This is the kind of thing that's kind of hard to describe. It doesn't really look like what you would expect. It's just a blob because, that most of the time you don't see something like that in your everyday life. And I see a pistol, I hear a shot. So I took this picture standing in Bailey's position, seeing what he would have seen. I'm sitting here on this stool working here. My mother was behind me. I don't know exactly where she was. She was also working. Okay, my mother, she was shot once in the upper part of left leg, 45 ACP hollow point. Gunshot wound through and through, lateral to femur. Does not strike femoral artery or bone. She was treated at the emergency room that night, and she was released. Okay, this is my location when they entered and began to shoot. So I'm sitting here on the stool, looking at where they would be. So you can see it's pretty close. I'm here, here. It's 4 or 5 feet. This is a kind of a view of the shots fired at both of us. And I believe Bailey, the main shooter, was shooting from right to left. So we have one puncture here, which I recovered against this steel safe. And then here, this ruptured bottle of pills. This is the medication I was actually working on. I had it in my hands, so it was literally exploding in my face. And he continues to fire. They fired the whole time. They basically never stopped. So these are my actions. I move forward to engage Bailey and Harris. I jump off the stool, I run through the inner doorway. I yank up my shirt with my left hand, draw my Colt 45 with my right as I reach my firing position behind cover. So I start here when the shooting starts. I exit and move forward through this doorway. So Bailey is here, he's in front. Harris is larger, he's slightly behind, to the rear, and overlapping. So you can only see the left half of his body. Bailey is the full view. So I move from here, and then I stop here. This is a very short distance. This, I call it the fatal funnel. My thinking was, I don't want them to get any further than here, because once they get into the waiting room here, it's just messy. You can't control that. Bailey is in front, Harris, basically the left half of his body, you can see. I engage Bailey and Harris. I have time to think. The muzzle of a gun will probably be waiting inches from my face as I round the corner, and I will probably die. I begin firing around the corner before I can see, to give attackers something to think about before I fully engage with aim fire. So the way I recall it was I fired 2 rounds initially, because I knew they were right there. As I round the corner shooting, I see 2 hugely barrel-chested males, all in black, wearing ski masks. I feel fear, and I think, shit, they're wearing armor. The way it looked to me, they looked like something out of a terrible movie. They were huge, really bulky up here. And I remember thinking that, this is going to be so much harder than just shooting them in the upper chest. And so, I was really afraid. I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm here, exposing just part of my right side of my body. This is the trajectory of, we think, Bailey's additional rounds. So he had fired this way, and continued to fire this way, and then continued to fire this way. We're not even sure how many bullets were fired. We just kept finding more of them. They were just laying all over the place. We'd find them under the paper, spent bullets. We'd find them under medication, in the walls. So here, Bailey's bullets fly past me on my right side. And the penetration here through this divider. This was Bailey's gun. He left it at the scene. It was a full-size M&P 45. Police told me later it was stolen from Bakersfield. These are my impacts. We have 2 here in Harris's left leg, because that's what's exposed behind Bailey. And then we have 3 impacts in Bailey. So out of 5 expended rounds, these are the 5 impacts. This one entered below the scrotum of Bailey, exited his gluteus. The one above it was his lower left quadrant of his abdomen. This one here was approximately center head. You can see, a lot of these were through and throughs. You can see the impacts in the wall behind them. So they were flying both ways. This was my gun. This is the same gun I used at Masaad's class in 2000. I had carried it pretty much every day for, 13 years up to this point. I fire 5 rounds. Bailey struck 1 time in the upper right inner thigh, 1 time in the torso, 1 time in the face, ½ inch to the right of his nose. So it was here, level with his right nostril, angling this way, towards the center of his brain. Bailey immediately collapsed on his back. He dropped so fast. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. I was shocked at how fast it was. Harris was struck 2 times in the left leg, 1 time low and 1 time high. Harris flees. This is where Bailey collapsed. He dropped his gun right here, right next to his right hand. He was laying on his back. Here you can see one of the through and throughs that passed through his abdomen. These are the 2 through and throughs that passed through Harris's left leg. And you can't really see it that much, but this is soaked in blood. There's also body tissue. This is, again, my viewpoint after Bailey has collapsed after Harris has fled. So he is laying there on his back, and I don't know his status. I don't know if he's dead. I don't know if he's alive. Even how many times he's been shot. I don't even know if I missed. Realistically, I haven't examined him. And his legs are pointed towards me. I maintain this position here, and I shout my commands: don't move, don't touch that weapon. After the shooting stops, Bailey collapses immediately, up to a minute. To me, it felt like a long time. Suddenly, he sits up and he removes his ski mask. So I shout my commands: don't move, don't touch that weapon. He does not reach for his pistol. He crawls away and exits to the door. I do not fire. I let him leave. I continue to maintain my position with my Colt. At this point, I don't even know the status of my mother. I don't know if she's alive or dead. I think she could even be laying behind the counter when I go back and see what happened. After Bailey crawls away, I perform a tactical reload with a Wilson 10-round magazine. I call 911 on my cell phone. And now I have a problem. I need to lock the door. So how do I do that? I always keep my keys in my right pocket, but I have a gun in my right hand. So I just kind of work through it. I draw the Centennial Airweight I always keep in my left front pocket. I have both guns out. I holster my Colt. I pull the keys from my right pocket. I lock the door. I go back to my previous position. I redraw my Colt. I have 2 hip guns in my hand. Then I holster my Smith. While locking the door, it's a glass door. I shine the laser, the crimson trace through the glass, because in my mind, I don't even know who's out there or how many out there. I mean, in my mind, they could come bursting through the door again. I mean, you know, at least that's how I perceived it. So out of 5 shots fired with the hollow points, actually 3 were through-and-throughs, only 2 stayed in. And this is where both of them eventually exited from the back door. So here's a close-up of the blood. And this, we believe, is Bailey's blood trail. He was shot 1 time in the leg, 1 time in the torso, 1 time in the head. He's deceased. Harris, he was shot 2 times in the leg, and he was arrested. The getaway driver was also arrested. That's the outcome.